I'm Keith Cosentino, he's Shane Jacks, and this is the PDR College Podcast. The number one place for experts like you to learn more and more and more about paintless dent removal. Why the heck would you be on a podcast about dent repair? Simple. To make stacks and stacks of cash, like my man, Shane Jacks. But before I let him chime in here and answer me, Shane, about why we need so much money, why you specifically need so much money, I want to take a second to talk about the new products that he and I are both introducing to the market. You've heard about them a couple times, but they are now a reality, especially if you haven't had a chance to make it out to Florida for the Mobile Tech Expo. You didn't get a chance to buy these new tools. Now you can. Hop over to my website and his. Mine, blackplaguepdr.com. If you can't spell it, deadrattabs.com. Look for the new gangrene oval tabs. Absolutely rave reviews coming back from everyone who took them home from the show. They should be added to the site today or tomorrow by the time you read this. Along with those, we have a new tab. It's the same shape as the gangrene tabs, but made of a new material. It's a collaboration between Kiko and myself. We call them the Black Ice. They are a translucent blue color, and they have been also pulling phenomenally. If you want the best tabs, which is about the cheapest thing you can buy in PDR, that will make you the most money per dollar spent, go and get them. You're a fool not to get them. If someone else came out with tabs that were just as phenomenal, I would tell you you're a fool not to get those too. It's not like I'm telling you to buy a $300 tool. It's 50 or 75 or 80 bucks. Just get the tabs. Thank me later. Now for Shane, his new tool, the new Edge Jack Pro with Precision Point, absolutely phenomenal. Go to his website, blendinghammerpdr.com, and snag one before they are out of stock. He's been running out. Every time he gets more, he runs out because they're selling so quickly. I don't know if they're on there right now, but I'd get over there faster than you think you should and get one. They are also not very expensive, but for what those things can do for you when you have a dent on the edge, ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous not to have one. Check those tools out. Add them to your arsenal. Help us support the show by buying our tools and enjoy this show. Now, where was I? Shane, why the heck do you need so much money?
Keith, so I can buy the entire Florida Keys. All of them.
How many keys are there? Like a janitor's amount of keys? Like that many keys?
Yeah, there are a lot of them. There are a ton of them. And I want to own every single one of them now.
You need to take me down there so you can prove to me that it's nice, because I believe it, but I've been burned by the Caribbean.
Some people are different, Keith. That's just my vibe down there, man.
No, I think I'll get it, but I got to go. I need you to take me. I need like a chaperone, because I'm telling you, like St. Thomas, Antigua, they left me wanting. It's not as nice as the pictures make it seem.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and honestly, the Keys are, I've explained it to different people and maybe on the podcast before, I don't know, because I love the Keys so much. It's, if you take a Jimmy Buffett song and put it into real life, that's what the Keys are, and that's just my vibe, man.
And you went down there with your figure eight machines, right?
I did, and went out in some weather that was ridiculous. And had a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, didn't you guys, you and Tony, didn't you go out on like a small craft advisory? That's when you decided to go out?
Yeah, that was the first day. There was a small craft advisory when we told the people at the marina that we were going out. They said, "Oh, y'all are going out in this?" I said, "Yeah." Well, what kind of boat do you have? Or how big is your boat? And I said, about 8 feet long. And they looked at me like, "What?" I said, "We've got two wave runners," and they just kind of stared at me blinking. And one of the old fogies sitting there says, "I've got a 28-foot boat and I'm not taking it out in this crap." I said, "Well, you're not as dumb as we are."
We're going to catch air, bro.
Went out and when we did, bro. I almost broke my neck one time. I got a stinger
Did you
from the
really?
wave. I went over one wave, and I didn't catch as much air as I needed to, and the other wave was so large coming in at me that I like smacked it straight on,
Oh,
and the water hit me in the face and cracked my head backwards pretty hard, and I got a stinger on my left side, and that scared me for a minute there. When your neck starts tingling really bad and your left side kind of goes numb, it scares you a bit.
the ocean will backhand slap you worse than any pimp.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a safe place to be.
I could literally fill an entire podcast with the stories from that trip, but we're going to save that for another time.
Well, you and I barely talked since that. I mean, we did the show, the seminar, and you buzzed out, went straight to the Keys, and came back and started cranking. I think you've probably talked to people on Facebook more than you talked to me because we've both been so busy.
Yeah, it's been crazy trying to get.
Did you catch fish?
On the jet skis? No, we only really got to go out one day. I got one big strike and it broke me off pretty quick, and that was it. But we caught fish with a guide. We went out and caught some. What are those big toothy things called? Barracuda. Yeah, we caught 4 barracuda and a yellow jack.
Yeah, I know a lot about fish. Apparently, more than you. How are you comfortable riding in those waves? Like, do you have experience doing that?
Honestly, growing up, my dad was in the Coast Guard, and he was based out of Alaska in those ridiculous seas, and he was on the rescue team. And so he went out in those little boats to rescue whenever they got a call to rescue stranded boaters or whatever in those crazy, crazy seas you see up there.
Yeah.
So growing up, my dad would take us out he had like a 27-foot boat, and he would take us, he and I, my brothers get seasick, and I don't. So he and I would go out in some ridiculous, he just kind of taught me no fear out there on the water. And there are a lot of stories with that too. Me and my dad in storms trying to fish on the ocean. It's pretty crazy. But anyway, I don't know. I just don't have a whole lot of real fear in the ocean, to be honest with you. I don't know why. I just don't have any fear out there.
Well,
it's just waves.
Yeah. Why would you? You float.
As long as you hit them correctly, you're not going to go over, especially with a life jacket on.
Yeah, it's easy if you know what you're doing. Plus, you have that curly.
Not that far out.
You have that. Don't you have that curly cable that's hooked to the wave runner, so you can't lose it?
Yeah, it shuts them off. Yeah. So basically, what you learned there is how to ride a wave runner and why I have no fear of the ocean.
Comes with giant huevos, I guess, because you have no fear of hardly anything except Siamese cats, if I remember the story right.
Untrue. I'm scared of a lot of things. The hard earth when I'm riding a mountain bike. That's why I'm not a better mountain bike rider.
Ooh.
I've hit the ground pretty hard a few times, and it put some fear in me.
I think most people have seen my mountain bike crashed up face by now. I guess if you haven't
forgotten about that.
If you haven't seen it, put a request in the Facebook group, PDR College Podcast Community Facebook group, and I will post it there for all to see. It's a brutal reminder that you should not ride a mountain bike fast without mountain bike skills.
I used to ride my hardtail with 3 inches of front travel way harder than I ride my 6-inch full suspension bike now.
You're also
back when I had no fear.
Yeah, you're also way older.
Way older. True. Very true.
Whenever I watch those young guys barreling through trees on a mountain bike, I think, man, that seems like so much fun, and there's no possible way I'll try that because all I can think about is missing one turn and getting mangled into one of those trees. That's all I can think about, and that's how I know I'm old, because you don't think about that.
I hit a huge oak tree one time.
Oh.
Come off the bike and just centered it, or not centered it. I got my head to the right side. I was actually riding with a guy one time that hit a pine tree. You know, their roots are not very stable. Pine trees will come down pretty easily. He hit about a 6-inch at the base pine tree, and he uprooted this thing live and everything. I don't know how. He was a big boy. Big muscular dude, but yeah, he uprooted a pine tree. It was pretty impressive.
You're not walking away perfectly from that.
He did.
Oof. Yeah, again, this is a story from your late teens or early 20s, I'm sure.
Mid to late 20s.
Mid
to late 20s.
Close enough. Well, I'm glad you're back on solid ground. I'm glad I was not on a jet ski. How many miles out? 7 miles you say you like to go or something like that? 6 miles? Something ridiculous.
Yeah, the first time we went out about 7 miles.
Yeah,
I'll go further than that.
I'm sure you will. We were talking about it in Florida, and if as soon as I'm at a distance that I can't swim back to the shore, I'm nervous. Forget about it.
And knowing your swimming skills, that's about 4 to 7 feet.
That's it. I basically can stand on the jet ski and fall down flat. And if my fingertips are not within grabbing distance of something, that's about as far as I can be.
I love the ocean, man.
The safest place for me to ride jet skis is in a water slide. Which coincidentally is more fun than figure eights in a lake. But let's talk about dent repair today, and we're going to talk about an exciting story. Who do we have as a special guest today, Shane?
Today we have Ken Maury up out of the North Carolina area. And I have not actually worked with Ken. I went up there to where Ken is from in his area. They had a hailstorm a couple of years ago and went up there and tried to secure a dealership up there, and it just kind of fell through on us. It fell through before we even got started, honestly. But Ken is out of the North Carolina area, and he is absolutely crushing it up there. He hasn't always, he's always done well up there, but he's, from the way he's telling us, Keith, he's doing a lot better than he was even just a few short years ago. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Him being in that area and him moving from another area, uprooting everything and going to the area that he's in now and starting over again and crushing it and getting through that barrier, thinking that he was stuck somewhere.
Yeah, walking away from a successful business and starting from scratch. So I'm sure neither you nor I combined could tell the story as well as Ken himself. So welcome to the show, Ken.
Well, thank you guys for having me. This is a pleasure.
It's our pleasure, Ken. So tell us, give us, first off, exactly where are you at in North Carolina?
I've been here in Raleigh, North Carolina, almost exactly 10 years to the day. Moved here in February of 2007 from the St. Louis area, and have been here ever since. I run a route go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Tell us what your business consists of right now.
Well, it's kind of a changing phenomena. When I first got here, it was strictly whatever somebody would give me to do. That's what I was doing, mostly on the rock wholesale lots. And I got a few body shops right away. And then eventually I started to get some of the big lots. And then the amazing thing that I kind of stumbled into accidentally was the retail market, which was a whole new phenomena compared to the St. Louis area where I was strictly 99% wholesale. I had to relearn how to be a dent guy, not necessarily from a technician side, but certainly from a business side, dealing with retail people. And that's what we're doing
different ball
now.
Game.
Oh my goodness.
Whole different ballgame.
Yes, that's true.
So Ken, what?
Go ahead, Shane.
What is the percentage of your business retail now, right now compared to 10 years ago? 10 years ago you were doing rock lots and everything. So.
Well, exactly. It's just increasing. I think even in the last 2 years since I've opened up a retail shop, it has even exponentially started to increase even more. I think I'm at least 50% retail. I might be off on that. It may be slightly less than that, but it's beginning to become almost impossible for me to really be out of this shop for any length of time. I can do half a day, but somebody's got to be here. Otherwise, people just knock on the door and, they're angry if somebody's not here to greet them. So my wife has to be here, or I need to be here most of the time. And that's kind of the direction we're heading. So
give me a little bit of history.
How you feel, brother?
Tell me about when you were back in St. Louis. Everything was going well. Kind of set that stage for me, and let us know what life was like. What did you do on a regular basis? And what happened that you decided to move, or you felt like you needed to move from St. Louis to an undisclosed location? It wasn't, you didn't have family in Raleigh. You just picked a couple different places around the country, looked at them. Tell me this story, because I need to know how you got where you are.
Right. Well, I started in 1993, lived in the St. Louis area a few years prior to that after being in the Air Force, and got into the dent business. I went to a school in Little Rock, Arkansas for about 8 weeks, and I can neither confirm nor deny that North Little Rock is anywhere near Chicken Lips, but did that for 8 weeks, and it was kind of funny. I expected when I got out of that school that I was just going to be a master at it, and boy, it was a tough school, and it was tough to learn. But when I got out of school, I had low self-esteem, but I was kind of thrown into the water, and it was amazing how quickly I learned it. I rode with somebody for about 2 weeks, and then they gave me a lot of killer accounts. And back in the early 90s, the level of skill that you would need to have was certainly nowhere near what you would need it to be today. I mean, you just can't send somebody to school and then let them ride with you for 2 weeks and then kick them out to the curb and expect them to survive today. That just wouldn't work at all.
No way.
Right. So basically what happened is after about a year, I really started to feel at that time that I mastered the craft. I mean, our tool selection was certainly very crude by today's standards also. It's amazing when I look back and realize that I only had about 8 or 9 tools and a light to start with, and compared to today, I buy more tools than that at the expo every January, even from you guys down there, I think. So, but basically,
this message brought to you by Black Plague and Shane Jack Signature Series tools. Yeah, Ken, I grew up in the same era as you. 1994 was when I started, and to say the tools were crude was that's a gross understatement for sure.
Well, I mean,
so
thank goodness they've evolved, and the cars have evolved also. It seems like things are getting better and easier.
Yeah,
no doubt. Early 90s was a terrible time to work on cars. There were braces everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So you went from Little Rock to St. I'm missing something in the story here, I believe.
Well,
they gave you these accounts in Little Rock, or?
Yeah, I trained in Little Rock. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear on that. They sent me down there for 8 weeks in Little Rock from St. Louis. That's where that school at the time was physically located. It's since long gone, but went there for the 8 weeks and then came back to St. Louis, rode with the guys for 2 weeks, and then I was out on my own.
Okay. So you were working for another company?
That is correct.
At that time. Okay.
That is correct. And the cool thing about that company is not only was I able to make a great living doing paintless dent removal, but I also had the opportunity to bring people on board and help participate in their training process and then get a little piece of that action also. So it wasn't just a one-dimensional, you only fix dents and then you go home and that's your life. If you wanted to, you could bring people on and help participate in that and financially gain also.
Do you remember what the spread was, what the pay plan was?
Basically, I'll do my best. I mean, they basically started over every month, but for the first amount of money, you would make 50%. The next amount of money that you would generate, you would make a little bit higher percentage, and then I think you would max out like at 70%, if I remember right, with them. And then, at the end of the month, once the last day hit, then the first day of the next month, you would just kind of start all over again at the lower percentage, and then cycle again and again, and then consequently, the other part of that would be split with the people above that person, that technician.
And then when you brought somebody on, how much of that did you get?
Depending on how many other people were working with me with that individual, if there was one other person working with me, then that other person and I, or if it was 2 or 3 people, we would just evenly split that money. And then the technician, would make his percentage, the remaining part. The other investors, I guess we could call them, basically just split that upline money.
So let me see if I understand, because I know a lot of guys are trying to build their companies and they're looking for different strategies that did or didn't work in the long run for bringing on guys. So I want to understand this one perfectly, because ultimately for you, it didn't work for whatever reason, and maybe we'll get to that. But So if you bring on a guy and he makes enough to make 70% of the ticket himself, there's 30% remaining.
Correct.
Are you saying you and the one guy above you would split that 30?
Right. In that case, it would be 15% for myself and the other person
I see.
that was working with me, helping that trainee or that other technician working out in the field.
Seems pretty generous from the guy on the top
Yes.
of this pyramid. Was it too
Yeah.
much? Was that part of the reason this thing crumbled? Was it too much?
I don't think so. I think that the gentleman, like for me, the guy that would bring the person on is the one that's doing the vast majority of the work, helping that guy. I mean, the guy at the tippy top was basically hands off. I mean, yeah, we would have our monthly meetings or whatever, but for the most part, he had set the system up. So in fairness to him, you might be right. Maybe he wasn't making enough. And certainly if there was, 9 or 10 people in that upline, without getting into all the minutia of that, by the time he got his piece of that, there really wasn't a lot left for him.
So if there's 10 guys in this system, like you're the 10th, like you've hired 10 guys, and this 10th guy brings on somebody, and there's 30% left, everybody gets 3%?
No, okay. I guess I should have basically, this is really complicated. You almost need to look at it on paper to make it make sense. But if there are 2 guys, you split that, we'll just say, like your example, that 30%, you would split 15% equally. But if after that, the guy that brought it on was basically always getting his 15%, and then the upline people, if there were 5 or 6, they would all have to split that remaining
I understand.
15%. So it got really finite, and it was even more complicated than that. But that basically explains how that could work, how it would work.
So what number were you in the company, Ken?
I was the 4th person to come on board that company.
Okay. How long did you stay there? Was this who you split from in St.
Yes.
Louis?
Yes, it
Okay.
was.
Okay. So
Just
when you
kinda
left, how
had
many guys were there?
Yeah, they were always trying to get more people. And just because I was the 4th one didn't mean if there was 100 that I was getting, a piece of every one of those. It was only the people that I was directly,
That you brought on. Yeah.
Correct. But we kind of had some irreconcilable differences. And, for about a year and a half, I was kind of in a fog. And finally, my wife said, well, you know what? We're moving. You're welcome to come with us, but we're leaving. I suggest you leave with us. And so that's...
Well, Ken, let me ask you a question, though.
Yes.
We've talked for a few moments before this, and we know that we're not going to get into specifics about this particular business arrangement, and that's fine. But the question I want to ask is, in retrospect, do you think you could have made it work with better or proper contracts or better expectations from each party? Well, the reason I'm asking this question is because a lot of guys are in this day and age, Shane and I see it. We talk to a lot of technicians through all the various mediums, and it seems like a lot of guys are partnering up for more horsepower in different markets for different reasons. So maybe something that you share can help some of these guys who are forming a partnership. Like, what would you do? Or maybe stop them from doing it. But do you think if you could go back and redo the paperwork or redo the agreement, everything could have worked out?
Let me speak to that. First of all, this company is still in existence, and I know that there are a lot of happy people in that organization. So in no way do I want to, put any bad light on them. My bad experience is as much my fault as anything else. And to move forward, looking back on it, the only thing that I wish I'd have done, the contract kind of changed. And so you get used to playing the ball game a certain way, and then all of a sudden, now it's going to be played a different way. Well, the people that come on after that change has happened don't realize what the game was like before. So to answer your question, I have people that I've brought on since, and I have what I consider to be a fair contract. And I just, I play my game a certain way, a different way, not as restrictive. And so for people that would want to bring somebody on, you really do need to have a contract and something that kind of defines the boundaries and the rules of the game. Does that answer your question, Keith?
Yes, it does. So it wasn't that your contract was bad before. It was that, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Well, it just changed, and it kind of took all the fun out of it. I had a bunch of people that were working for me, and when these changes happened, they left. They were mad. They quit. And, I'm still friends with all of them. We see each other down at the Florida Expo. So there's no bad blood between those folks that I had brought on and myself. I mean, it was just a scenario where, because the organization was growing at such a quick rate, that I guess, there was just some advice that they needed to tighten up a lot of things, and it just sort of took the wind out of a lot of people's sails. But, looking ahead, I realize now that the best thing for me to do is just to grow my own business, and I don't look back on that. I look at that. I needed to go through that, Keith, in order to be where I am today, and I don't regret that for a minute. It was a learning experience, and worse things have happened to people, and people get through those things, and that's what makes us who we are.
That's a great perspective, and it's one that I share to a large degree. You don't ever lose. You either win or you learn, and then you just keep trucking forward, because as soon as you stay glued onto those, if it just woulda, if I could have, I mean, shoot, I think Shane's the same way. He doesn't ever lose. He just learns a lesson and then gets started again. I've been right next to him, that seeing deals that were going to change his family tree come and go in a matter of a breakfast. And Shane,
right.
The next day, he just gets right back after it. We learn a lesson and keep trucking.
A literal breakfast.
I think if you talk to most successful millionaires, a lot of them will tell you that they've had some brutal failures in life. And I think how they dust themselves off and get back on their feet and go out there and do it again defines them more than whether or not they actually had to go through those types of things.
100% agree.
Yes. I do a lot of learning, let's say that.
So do I. I think I have a master's degree in the College of Hard Knocks as far as what not to do. I've never said I was the sharpest tool in the shed. I'm the one that gets used all the time, I guess.
All right, so your wife says, hey, it's time to go. We're going. You're either with us or you're staying. So bring us to that part of the story.
Well, I really had to get my head in that. I mean, if you're going to leave, you better be ready to commit to that. And, there was about a 2 or 3 week funk there, but eventually I got my head around the fact that I was in fact leaving. And once we got to our new location, we just rented a cheap apartment and sold a lot of stuff that we weren't going to need. And, just basically I started over again. And the funny thing is when you're the number one dent guy in that company for 12 years in a row and you have the plaques to prove it, and when you move somewhere else and nobody knows who you are, there's a lot of crow that you get to eat. You got to work at a lot of places that, prior to moving here, I would have never done. I wouldn't have even considered. And, I've got 5 days a week, assuming I started on a Monday, to figure out what the heck I'm going to do to get to Friday. Or heck, I wanted to work on Saturday too. I needed to, make money and feed my family and all of that. So definitely
that was going to be one of my questions when you were talking about at the beginning of the show. You said something about bringing when you came to the Raleigh area, to North Carolina, you worked a lot of rock lots and dirt lots. How was that mentally? That's got to be tough, especially if I couldn't imagine picking up from Greenville right now. If I did, I'll be honest with you, I would probably just chase hell. I know that I could make it work in basically any city, but going through it again, maybe that's head trash for me, Keith. I know I could do it. I don't think there would be any problem in virtually any city if I picked up and left, but I'm not sure that I want to go through all of this again, just to be honest with you.
It's a lot of work.
It is.
We've talked about that a lot, Shane. It's a lot of work running a retail business. You got to be on point every day.
All the time.
You got a system for taking calls over the weekend. I mean, it's a different animal. It's not for everybody.
Well, and then let me add something to that. You're used to that pace. I mean, you're used to having more to do in any given day than you can hope to get done. And so then to go to this new place and you don't have squat to do. I mean, there's one other thing I had to get my head around also. I mean, I'm just used to knocking down anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000 a week back then. And, come Monday morning, there's nothing there. I mean, the first day that I worked, I didn't make a dime, but I just made it a point that I was going to go somewhere. In fact, what I did is I made it a game for myself, guys. I just said, okay, how many times in a row can I get somebody to tell me no, buzz off? I decided that I think the worst I ever got was 3 times in a row where somebody wouldn't give me something, no matter how much I begged. And I made a game out of that too. I just said, here, I'm the new guy in town. Let me give you something for free. And I know it's a fine line for me between being a pest and being an aggressive salesman, but I'm making 2 mortgage payments now. I've got one in St. Louis I'm trying to sell, and I'm renting a place here, so I got to make some money. And so you just, you find out what you're made of, and you just get out there and you start making some stuff happen. And that was all I could focus on, and that helped me get through all the other emotional damage that I had been through, having to start all over again.
I can definitely sympathize with you there, on a different scale. Well, not really on a different scale. When I left BMW, there was only one day after I left BMW that I basically didn't make any money, and there was another day that I made $50 at a car lot. But I mean, overall, I was making money, and I was doing the same as I was at BMW, basically, then plus some, and I was getting by. So I had to kind of, my situation was very unique in that I went from doing this on the side and having a full-time hourly position where I made good money. And then, I came out and kind of had to start from scratch almost, when I left the plant. And so a little bit different. So I was basically starting a business for the first time, whereas you were basically starting one for the second time, right. In a completely different city with no contacts. But on a different level, I know what you're saying with these deals that Keith is talking about, most of them being at the BMW plant. There have literally been 3 and currently about to be 4 deals that a couple of them I walked away from. And walking away from that kind of money and picking yourself back up is not easy. It's not easy. And you've just got to keep keeping on, like you said, and you've got to have the right mindset like you did. It didn't matter that you were working on dirt lots. It mattered that you were making money,
I was grateful for those jobs. I mean, I just decided that I had to take a different attitude. I mean, I was king of the hill back where I was from. And when I moved out here, I was nobody, and I had to reestablish my reputation. I mean, the only thing that I had when I came out here was my freshly relettered Astro van, my tools, and my integrity. And I was damn sure I was going to make it work. And that's what you do. You just go out there and find something to do. We're males. We go out, kill it, and drag it home. That's what we do.
This kind of reminds me of what was that movie with shoot. Man, I'm ruining this because I can't even think of the name of the movie.
Wait a minute, you're not supposed to be
Encino Man.
Forgetful. That's me.
No, Encino Man. The cheese is old and moldy. I don't know why I remember that quote out of that. Will Smith was in it where he was trying to sell those X-ray equipment machines, and then he becomes that
sewing
broker.
Machine box. I remember that movie.
Yeah. So he just didn't freaking give up. Him and he and his son were sleeping in a public bathroom one night, and that just came to my mind, where you just don't freaking give up,
That's it.
Until you succeed. And before we get into what happened after you moved, Ken, I want to ask you about something about the whole training thing. You said you were able to bring guys along at the first company in St. Louis.
Yes.
Something that I have found, and I think Keith will attest to this. It doesn't matter what you're teaching people, whether it be hard skills in paintless dent repair, or whether it be soft skills that Keith is so masterful at, the phone skills, sales skills, marketing skills, all that good stuff. It doesn't matter what you're doing. The more you teach somebody, even if you know exactly what you're doing, you learn so much more teaching someone else than you do not. I mean, it's if you were just out there pushing dents and not teaching someone else, you don't learn near as much as you do teaching someone else. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would absolutely agree. And I think the reason for that, Shane, is that they're asking you a question about something that you just already know the answer to, but it forces you to finitely, articulate why you're doing something, which in turn kind of, changes the way you look at it also. So I completely agree with that.
Exactly. And it reinforces, if it's a soft skills thing, like what Keith is so good at, it just reinforces in you every day what you already know. And
Right.
it's kind of like watching motivational speeches. I'll click on YouTube and I'll get on those motivational things, man, and I'm ready to go after those things. You know what I mean?
There's only one thing I've never been able to figure out how to teach, and that's integrity. Have you guys figured that one out?
Nah, I think you either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
The first guy that I brought on, I'll be quick about this, went through the training, and within the first day or half day that he was riding with me, I knew we had made a mistake. I mean, the guy was about 15 years older than me, and halfway through the day, he was talking about how, yeah, I want to work for a while. And then, he was talking about how he'd injured himself and how great it was to be able to sit home, and collect that workman's comp. And I'm thinking to myself, oh no, now I know, now I know what I have. And after he left, this is a true story, a couple of my dealers said, I'm really glad he's no longer with you all, because we were about ready to have to ask him to never come back because he was selling automatic weapons out of your van. This is a true story.
That is awesome.
Oh, wasn't it? And I wasn't even getting a piece of that either. It kind of ticked me off.
I hear you.
Ken, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
A lot of the guys listening, by the nature of the fact that you're listening to a podcast on dent removal, these guys are one of, if not the best in their respective markets. A lot of them. Not everybody, but a lot of them. Just like you were back in your town. Now, when you move to a brand new place, you don't know if you're the best anymore, right? You know you were the best or one of the best back home, but you don't know when you got into the new market. Did you feel like you were the best in that market when you landed there, or did you feel like you needed to kind of figure the lay of the land and see if there was some superstar hiding in the wings there that you needed to compete head on with? Speak to that a little bit for me.
Sure. Well, here's the thing. We actually made it a point before moving out here to come out here. It was about 2 months prior. I mean, we hadn't decided we were going to leave that organization, but the handwriting was kind of on the wall, and we decided maybe we better figure out, nail the place and go check it out. So that's what we did. We came out here about a month or two prior, and I just made it a point to go talk to some of the places, the dealers, and just ask them. And what I first did was we landed here, I think, like on a Saturday. And so Sunday, I just made it a point to kind of go look around on some of these car lots and just see what things looked like. And so I saw that there was opportunity. And to be honest with you, today, I don't even know if I would need to do that. I think what I would do differently is I would just really pursue a powerful website, the one that I have now, as a matter of fact, and just, obviously relocate it, but keep all of my positive reviews and everything and just plug that into this market, and really media blitz it. And then, I'd probably have to do some wholesale work just to kind of, unless I had 20 years of my life savings saved up or something and didn't care, I'd probably do a little bit of wholesale work until, I could wean off of that and be full retail.
You want to give out your website so people can check it out if you're proud of it?
Yeah, if you Google Dent Dominator, you can see what we have there. I have an IT person that's currently working on it. We're trying to get some new videos put on. And so it'll be better probably in a month's time than what it is now. But we definitely have a lot of before and after pictures. I think I've got a video or two up there. And I've got a link to Yelp where you can see my ugly old gray-haired mug on that. And so, yeah, feel free to look at that.
So your strategy when you landed in town is a lot like some of the advice I've given to other guys when they say, hey, I'm thinking about moving to XYZ. I advise them to figure out what is going on in the market first by calling all the dealers and the body shops, just asking them for a referral to a dent repair company. and seeing who they tell you. If half the places tell you the same company, you know you've got a powerhouse. If everyone gives you a different name, you know you got a scattered little tiny market. And you'll start to see who the real players are, and then you can research their online presence and see if they have one, and consequently decide if that market is saturated or not.
You know, today I think what you're saying is absolutely correct, but I think that sometimes websites can be kind of misleading. They can make people appear larger than they really are, or should I say organizations are large. It could make them look bigger than they really are, or more.
Thank goodness for that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when I came out here 10 years ago, web pages were starting to become the thing, but I just hit the ground running. I hit a lot of body shops, and I was amazed how many body shops didn't trust dent guys. So that was a lucky thing for me, a blessing for me 10 years ago. I'm not so sure today that that's the case all over the country, but I'm sure there still has to be some pockets, you know, where it's not saturated. Our industry's not saturated with techs.
I don't think it's saturated with no. Okay, it is saturated with techs. A lot of areas are saturated with techs, but only because those techs are focusing on the wrong areas or on the same areas. I think virtually every market in America is virtually untapped on the retail side. We're just
I agree with you on
too
that.
much in our
I
infancy.
agree.
Except for Sacramento. Keith's got that covered.
And Greenville is also on lock.
I don't think so. I honestly think that if someone else with the same presence that I have, Keith, and it has the same kind of service that I have, and that's the key, would do as well as I am. There are that many cars out here.
Well, that's like,
and in
that's
Sacramento.
like saying with someone else with a winning lottery ticket would also win the lottery. Like, yeah, okay, good luck. That's true, but good luck.
Yeah. Point taken. Point taken. So, Ken, you move to Raleigh. You get through the dirt lots. You get some bigger wholesale accounts, I take it, over the next few years. But you're still running mainly wholesale, correct? For several years, I take it, for the most part.
You know, I'll tell you this. I was kind of thrown into the retail because a couple of these body shops really liked me and liked what I would do. And they would just say, you don't need to have us paint that fender for that quarter dent here. You know, and a bunch of them wanted a stack of my cards. I mean, I was really fortunate. You know, somebody was looking out for me on that whole deal. And so the retail side, I was kind of thrown into it. When I was in St. Louis, I really wasn't doing it. The only way I would deal with retail people is if they were willing to meet me, you know, at a car lot, and I would try to do it. And I didn't even know how to price. I really didn't know how to even begin to do retail per se. And when I started doing retail here, I could write a book or do 10 podcasts on all of what you should not do. I mean, I was a graduate of the school of hard knocks, what not to do, you know, driving halfway across the town because somebody wanted me to look at their car without asking questions. I mean, it's crazy.
Tank top and flip-flops?
Yeah, you know.
When in Rome.
No,
right.
Well, you know,
Can't tell.
To say,
I'm curious, when you started getting work there, is there one big win that you remember, like one big account you nailed down or anything that really kind of turned the tides for you?
I'll tell you what turned the tide for me. When I left the St. Louis area and I moved out here in February, it was the last week in December, and I looked at what I had generated, and I had generated in less than, 11 months or 9 months, 10 months, whatever it was when I physically started, and I had generated in the month of December $4,000. I looked at that number. Now, granted, that's not a big number for a lot of guys, but for me, new to the area, it wasn't my biggest number, but it was a huge number for me. And when I looked at that, I was just I felt a little bit of pride, and I thought to myself, I've done it. I've made it. I'm going to make it. I think that was probably one of the biggest wins, Keith, that I felt.
That's fantastic. It doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a $30,000 month to get you motivated to keep going out there.
No.
One other question I'm curious about is, everybody talks about the pricing in my market, right? Oh, my market only pays this. And I challenge a lot of people on that, but not completely, because I do agree that the wholesale side of the business does have a market generally, because the guys all talk to each other. If they've all been in the business a long time, so they know the guys knocking on their door are quoting them prices in X range, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe that's also head trash on my part, but that's one of my beliefs. But I do challenge that there is a market. But when you got to a new place, did you find that there was a used car market that you had to kind of fit in between before people would give you any piece of their action?
There definitely was on the new car franchise market, Keith. I mean, they were locked in at $55 a car. And I remember after going to about the third place and hearing that, I'm thinking to myself, that's insane. I mean, that's insulting. And so that's probably what even motivated me more to go to these rock lots where I could do, a much larger den and charge whatever I wanted to charge. And they were happy to have someone show up and do that, because most of the guys only wanted to do the dime-sized dents, even at the rock lots. And I kind of lost interest with the big lots for a while. And then once you're there for a while, they start to realize that you can do some bigger things. And even after you're doing some of the bigger stuff, they're acting like, well, that should only be $55 a car too. And it's like, yeah, good luck finding somebody to do that for you.
So they pushed on you to match that price and you denied it?
What I figured out that I could do is say, well, look, okay, I'm going to work with you a little bit on this, but why don't you just go ahead and use your $55 a car guy and let me go fix these other 6 or 7 cars, and I'll fix these, and this is what I'm going to charge you, and you go ahead and use that other $55 a guy car. I think that was what I had done with quite a few of them, and it wasn't all of them, but there was definitely some consistency to that $55 a car, which, by the way, I do not charge that today.
All right. So at what point, Ken, did the retail really start picking up for you?
It has picked up progressively almost every year, probably 3 to 5%. But what happened was about 2 years ago, I just decided, it would be cool if I could just have some hole in the wall spot where I could have people drop off cars. I had a website, they would call me. The mobile thing was really kind of taking off. Oh, you can do mobile repairs? Yeah, I can do that. But if I had a retail hail person, trying to do that out of my garage was kind of a hassle. I had an HOA where I lived, and I couldn't have too many cars in the driveway. And so what happened was I just rented a little spot here, a little 900 square foot place where we can shove 3 cars in, but comfortably work on 2 cars if they're not too large. And about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I got this place. It's just amazing. As soon as that physical address got put on the website, all of a sudden people just started showing up. And I put on the website, call for an appointment, but it's like they don't even read that. They just read the address and show up. And the last year and a half, we had a hailstorm that hit us last year here, last March. And that was probably the most insane time. I did more money last year than I did the 2 years prior, almost combined.
How far are you two from each other? How far is Raleigh from Greenville?
It's a good ways. It's about a 4.5 hour drive.
I wonder if that same guy with just the sweatshirt sleeve drove on up to Ken's place after you'd shut him down.
I don't think the car would make it there, Keith.
No?
No, I'm pretty certain it would not make it there. That is for sure. Ken is in a really nice area. There is some money in that area. That is just a little background, Keith. Keith, that's the Research Triangle area there, right, Ken?
It is. That was part of the reason we came down this way. We kind of researched areas, and that was definitely something that was highlighted as far as places that were likely to, face economic growth.
Yeah, that's where. What are the 3 universities there? And they're
NC
big
State,
medical.
Duke, and then UNC.
Yeah, big medical universities. A lot of medical research. and
pharmaceutical
development.
research, a
Yeah.
lot of electronic research. I mean, there's definitely the Research Triangle area there in the Durham, Morrisville area is definitely a huge, huge complex with multiple different corporations and a lot of high earners there also.
Yeah.
And
It's
Shane,
really nice there.
Shane, you've said it before. I mean, if you live in an area where there's no money, move somewhere else where the market is
flip out.
good. I mean, and that's what Ken did. He had his choice on where to go and researched how many other places besides Raleigh?
Well, I was born and raised in Minnesota, and my wife was not going to move with me up there. And truth be told, I don't think living up there in the winter and trying to fix dents would have been the best thing. But there were at least 2 or 3 places, Florida, Texas, and this was one of them also.
Yeah, and you pick the place that best matches the demographic that you need to serve for retail dent repair, and it's not Chicken Lips.
Or Temecula, is that the other fancy place?
That is the other one. That is the other one.
Temecula.
Bless their hearts.
And now, just over the last few years, you're up to at least 50% retail. That's pretty dang good, Ken. When you say 50%, that is total revenue, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so Ken has taken himself from 10 years ago, moving to Raleigh, North Carolina from St. Louis with absolutely nothing, and making it within the first couple of years. How long did it take you before you were matching your income in St. Louis there in Raleigh?
I wanted to touch on that. I wanted you to mention, Ken, what were you walking away from in St. Louis? Because some guys might think you're walking away from $50,000 a year. It's not the case.
Oh, no. I was $250,000 last year. I did. In 2006, when I was with that other company, I personally generated $260,000, and I had, so I made maybe 60% of that. And then I had 2 other guys that were putting at least one put $30,000 in my pocket, and the other one probably put close to $75,000 in my pocket. So yeah, I was definitely what would be considered a decent earner in that day.
In any market, yeah. So walking away from that, and then to follow up with Shane's question.
I'm sorry, what was Shane's question?
I'm sorry. How long did it take you before you were matching that $260,000 in Raleigh?
I would say that, I moved here in February. I think I did $140,000 in the 10 months that I was here, the end of 2007. And then that next full year, I was over $200,000 in gross sales.
So in less than 2 years, Ken, you had picked up just left cold turkey, and you quit St. Louis and moved to Raleigh, and within 2 years, you were basically matching your income. That is pretty good.
Well, yeah,
Takes a
actually,
hustler.
probably better because I wasn't giving up a percentage either. So, and let me say something about that, because when I left, I was just so beat down. It emotionally, it crushed me to have to leave those people. I loved working with most of those people, and I never believed that I would ever be able to make that kind of money again. And that was just my own head trash, and moving out here and just doing it. I mean, looking back, I realized that I was my own worst enemy with this thing. And if I'd have just left 2 or 3 years earlier, not only would I have not been there and living in that, but I would have spent that time investing in myself. And so I sure hope that if there are people that are not happy where they're at, take a hard look at that and figure that out and realize that, I'm nobody special. Anybody can do this. If you're generating X amount of money, you're not going to do it within 2 weeks of moving somewhere else. But if people like you, if you have integrity and you work hard and they know that you're a hard worker and that you have integrity, I promise you it's going to come back to you.
So in your company now, do you have technicians working with or for you?
I do.
Do you want to talk to the structure you chose to put in place there?
Sure. Brought one gentleman on about 6 years ago, I believe. And as of January, he is no longer with me. He purchased out. He bought himself out from under me. But I do have another gentleman working for me. And this last summer when the hail hit, I had 3 people working for me. One of them stayed with me for about 2 weeks, and then he vominosed out to Montana. Shane, you know him, and that was Frank. And then I had 2 other guys that were with me, and each of those gentlemen, one of them stayed with me for probably about 2 months, and the other gentleman was probably about 3.5 months. The storm was huge here. It was really large.
So the one guy that was with you for 6 years, he was doing regular route retail stuff just like you.
Yes.
And you mentioned
basically
he bought himself out. So how did that work? How did he have to buy himself in? Like how does that strategy work?
Basically, we kind of have a non-disclosure, but I'll just generally talk about it. I mean, I was making a percentage, and so we just kind of based my value of his business on that percentage that I was earning. And I really don't want to go too much further into that because he requested a confidentiality clause, and I really want to honor that with him. He's a good guy. He wanted to move on, and I could tell. And I was actually happy that he bought instead of just leaving, because I do have a non-compete clause, and I really didn't want to go through the weeds with all of that. And, he decided to buy out. And in fact, he and I are still friends. We were down there in the expo together. We hung out together. I saw him on the road today, and we chatted for a while on the phone. So I have nothing bad to say about him. I mean, he's a rock star. He works really hard. And the other guy that's still with me, Cameron, he came down to your class, and he was really excited after having gone through your class down there. I'm glad he went, and it really motivated him. I mean, he's had some really killer weeks here the last 2 weeks since he's been back.
I love hearing that.
Excellent. That is good stuff. So
the guys are W-2 employees, or are they contractors?
What I do is for the first year, I'm just going to let them be W-2 employees. I used to work a commission, but then listening to one of your podcasts a couple of years ago, you talked about how you just put them on a salary. I forget if it was you, Keith, or Shane, which one of you said that was what you did in the beginning so that you wouldn't have them cherry picking work, and then once they're good, then I just make them independent contractors. And I just work off of a percentage then. They make 70%, I make 30% off of what they do.
It sounds like a good deal.
Yep.
Well, you try to be fair with guys. I mean, I've trained between here and out there with the other company. I'm sure I've helped at least 10 people get into this, and they all have the same cycle. Let me say it this way. We all have the same cycle. You're very dependent in the beginning when you do this. And then you sort of become independent, and then in the end you become a little more interdependent, because at that point you start to realize you need the other guy to cover for you when you want to take a trip. If Cameron wants to leave for a couple of days, I can at least try to help him with something. I'm so busy it's hard for me to do that, but at least he knows that somebody's going to cover for him. And last year when I was gone for 2 weeks in Europe, they covered for me, which I had no business leaving during the middle of a hailstorm. But if I didn't go, my wife would have probably gone without me, and maybe I wouldn't have a home when she got back. So I kind of had to leave.
And I
know how that is.
You know what? You reminded me. I got to give a shout out to the lovely Mrs. Maury for kind of orchestrating this entire plan. She believed in you enough to know that she's going to take you to a brand new city, plop you down, and she had the faith that you were going to rebuild back to where you were and surpass it. So that's a good wife you got there.
Well, Keith, you've said it all there. I mean, that was a real dark time for me, and she was probably what got me through this. I mean, my head was in a funk. I mean, and she just basically, she picked the apartment. She got my business cards. She got my shirts. I mean, she was laying it all while I was out there just still trying to generate money and just trying not to think about things, and kid myself into thinking maybe I wasn't going to leave, even though I kind of knew I was. So, back then she was, and this year when we had this hailstorm, she absolutely stepped up again. I got to give her credit where it's due. And she absolutely managed the front end of this thing with the insurance companies. I mean, you want to talk about a learning process. When you're doing hail for a body shop, they're handling all of that. And the percentage you give them is really worth it because they're handling the supplements and all of that. I mean, she does all of that. And man, that was a learning experience for both of us also.
Yeah, I preach that quite a bit. The whole percentage to the body shop thing. That's if it's run correctly, if the body shop is running it correctly, and they're bringing so much work to you, it is definitely worth that percentage. I know guys get this in their mind that well, I could be doing this without them. Really? are you sure you could be getting those 30 cars a week or whatever that they're feeding you without any cost to you whatsoever? I think not.
Exactly.
Especially
when you need, when you need a supplement and then the car's here and then somebody's got to be here. I even trained my wife with this software. It is so easy. I had her after the second car. She was absolutely writing estimates. She can swing the light around. She can scan the VIN. She knows when an oversized dent is an oversized dent. She learned that a lot faster than I ever did. You made the comment when you were down, or I made the comment when you came up here a couple of years ago, Shane, that I didn't know how much money I had left on the table all these years. And I was able to show her that after about the second car.
Yeah. And the look on Keith, I don't know if I've told you this story, the look on Ken's face, when I measured out the oversize to him on that, what was that one car? It was about $600 or $800 on that one car.
It was a black Honda Fit, so it should have been obvious to me even, but I'm thinking these are quarter-size dents, and I'm sure half of those dents, I just, those aren't, oversized or whatever, and then you kind of walked me around a different direction, and there was a fluorescent light or something, and you're like, no, look at these, look at it this way, and I'm like, holy freaking doodle, you got to be kidding me.
I can either confirm or deny that Holy Freaking Doodle will make a reappearance on the podcast at some point.
Holy freaking
This
Doodle.
This is a family show. I kept it clean, didn't I?
I appreciate
we
that.
We have to. That's for sure. So, Ken, what's the one thing over the last 10 years that you've learned that has changed your business the most?
Don't stop growing. Don't stop learning. I'll tell you one of the things, and this is going to sound like I'm kissing up, and I don't mean it to. I truly believe this. About 4 years ago when you guys put that podcast out, I mean, it was like you were talking right to me. All the little things that you guys say, I inherently knew those things, but you would articulate them in a way that just clarified them for me. And so I've been in this since 1993. Keep your mind open that there are still things that you can learn.
Brother, the only reason I can teach it is because I've went through the exact same stuff myself. That's the truth. The whole oversized thing, I was at the same spot you were for a while, man. And, I had somebody show me and I'm like, what an idiot. Holy freaking doodle.
We're going to have two bleeps in this show.
Yeah. And the stuff that Keith has taught me over the last 3 or 4 years, it's just, it's been immense in the growth of my business. And honestly, before 3 or 4 years ago, I had a hard time even calling this a business. But at this point, I did a video today of a door that I did a crease on, and a gentleman commented and asked me, so how much was that crease? Like $350? And I didn't want to say it. It was on my personal live feed, my personal page. So I've got family and just random people watching it. And I didn't really want to say what the cost was. But yeah, 3 or 4 years ago, it would have been $350 because I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, I can rock this out in an hour and a half. That's good money. And it is.
How long was it? How long was that crease?
12, 14 inches.
So let's see. According to was there a body line involved?
No, he's going through his pricing guide, Keith. I
am. I'm coming up with $700 real fast on my price guide.
Yeah, we bid it at $6.
Okay.
One of my guys bid it at $6, and
so let me be clear about the price guide. This is another one of those things that has, in the last year and a half, absolutely changed how I price things. And the funny thing is, it takes a lot of courage to look at that and say that number, $700, and look the person in the eye when $300 might make the guy running away in your own mind, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, you've got to believe in it. As Zig said, if you don't believe it, you're not going to sell it. You throw that 700 out there, look them square in the eyes, and
yeah,
wait.
It's like that falling test, right? You just have to fold your hands on your chest, close your eyes, and fall backwards, knowing that the pricing guy is going to catch you. You just gotta let them know, man, because it seems like they're gonna say no. It seems like everything bad's gonna happen, but the only bad thing that can happen is they say no, and then you say, okay, what does it take for you to say yes? And they say 350, and you say, okay, sold. You know, you can always negotiate down, but it is you got to have some stones to tell them a price that you're not comfortable with. But the more you give those prices out, the easier it becomes. Wouldn't you agree now, Ken? I mean, you could deliver that $700 quote for a crease without getting your heart rate up.
When I went to your class the first 2 times, the thing, especially after the second time, that I learned is that I didn't need to learn a lot of skills necessarily. I needed to find my courage. That was what I needed to find. And to answer your question, Keith, yes, it's much easier now than it was 3 months ago, a year ago, or whatever. And sometimes even still, it's like I look at this thing and I look at the person across the room and I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, okay, how close to this number can I hit before, they start to give me the stink eye? But absolutely, this is definitely a game changer.
Well, Ken, I'm glad you came on the show today, and I'm glad you reached out and were willing to share your story with such transparency. I think it will help give a lot of guys the courage they need to either make that jump to a new market or solidify themselves in the current market and just get out there and get a little more serious about it.
Sure. Life is too short. If you're not happy, you've got to figure out what it is and just have the courage to face it. I mean, that's definitely what I had to do, and I don't look back on it and regret having done it.
Making those decisions each and every day myself, Keith. What's going to make me happy? I'm sure you are too.
Yeah, happiness, so that's a different story. We're just talking about making money at work.
The two can coincide.
Yes, but they don't always.
Not always. Nope.
Now, before we get off the air here for the podcast, Shane, we are going to start talking about a tool of the month with A1 Tools. Now, John and Maria with A1 Tools have, as of late, been doing an amazing job of putting their company out into the cyber world and letting everybody know who they are and what they've got going on. And they've got a new set of tools out, and I apologize that I don't have them pulled up quickly here, but give me just a moment, and I will. You might know about them, Shane. It's those new sharp-tipped ratcheting handle set tools. I think they call them the Aussie tools.
Yeah, it's the 14 AU RCT. That's the number on those guys.
Have you got it pulled up?
I do. I do.
Cool. Tell me about them.
So they are ratcheting handle Aussie hand tools. I'm just kidding. They're very sharp, kind of like a circus tool. That's the same shape that they have on the end, Keith, and they're pointed basically the same as the circus tools, except they're 1/4 inch. They're small, so they'll get into some areas. I can see these things being really useful on the top of doors, Keith. Extremely useful, especially with that ratchet handle. Being able to flip that around if your door frame is in the way or whatever. I see those as being a very useful tool set. I do not have them yet. I did not get to walk around MTE, hardly any, and see those tools there. And I'm definitely going to order a set. For 3 ratcheting handle tools with sharp tips made out of, I'm pretty sure they're made out of stainless, if I'm not mistaken.
It doesn't say on the description. I've got it pulled up now, but they looked like stainless. Let's assume they're not, since it doesn't say stainless.
Okay, so matters not. If it's not stainless, they're made of spring steel, which is a very good steel for dent removal tools. These things, 3 of them with ratchet handles, and they're one is 9 inches long, one's 15 inches long, and one's 21 inches long. And for the price that you could basically get one tool from many other manufacturers, these things are $165 for the whole set, Keith.
It's ridiculous.
It is.
I think that John is actually mining his own iron ore and making his own steel, because I don't know how he can sell the tools so cheap, but he does it, and they're fantastic. $165 for 3 tools. It's amazing. I actually saw these tools myself at the MTE. So one thing I did see, I left like 1 or 2 times from the booth, and I asked John and Maria what's new, and they said these are new. And they are not huge tools. 9, 15, and 21 inches are not long. But the immediate place that I pictured them when I picked them up is working in a hood, in an aluminum hood when you're working through different braces. Having the longest one with the handle being able to move around like that, I would get whatever handle swing I needed from whatever side I thought. And it was really sharp, which is what I like to use on an aluminum hood.
Yes.
So fantastic little tool. So it's the product code is 14AURCT1. So I think if you just hop on their site, it's actually one of the featured tools on the homepage on the top left corner. So check them out, buy them before they're out of stock. Looks like they give you an option for the colors on the handles. It's got a nice little ratcheting handle, and they dip the back half of it in handle material. So there's some tool companies in the past I've seen use a similar ratchet handle, but don't dip it, just leave it a bare black metal, and they're actually putting a handle on it on top of that. So I think you and I both are going to order these.
Probably as soon as we hang up.
Yep. Why don't you just pay for mine? They're basically free.
Will not do.
Yeah. Likewise, while we're asking you to do something, I want you to do something for me as a host of this show. I want you to go into iTunes and leave us an amazing review. A lot of you have done it already. Well, scratch that. A lot of people have done it already. But as a percentage of our listeners, very few of you have done it. The show is free. We ask for nothing but your attention. But now I want a little bit of skin in the game. I want you to give us a good rating, and I want you to promise me that you will forward the show on to one of your stubborn friends who does not listen yet. Just one, not 5 or 10 or 3. Just one guy. We want everybody to forward this to one person and try to help them help their dent business. We all know one guy in the business who's not listening, hasn't bought new tools in a while. But listen up. The dude is still at work for 8 hours and he's listening to the radio. Just tell him to listen to this for 1 hour and see if we can help change his life and help change his market. That would make Shane and I both very happy. I will be checking in with you again on the next podcast, and I will be congratulating you if you've done it, and chastising you if you haven't, all in a one-way conversation.
That's the best conversations, one way.
I always win. Fellas, thanks for hanging out with us for an hour. Thanks again to Ken Maury for his time and participation in the show. Until next time,
get better.
And now it's time for the PDR Marketing Minute, your weekly quick tip to help you build your PDR business.
Welcome back, episode 32 of the PDR Marketing Minute. I'm your host, Gene Fetty. So this is my first live podcast recording since the Advanced Skills Seminar and MTE. I hope you were there. I hope you got to come up and say hi. If not, you got to make sure you get down to the Advanced Seminar and MTE next year. What a great week. And I did get to meet a lot of you. I've also launched my PDR video course. I know I've talked about it and told you it takes you from shooting the video, getting on camera, everything like that. I think what a lot of people are misunderstanding is the power of marketing with video. So I'm going to take this minute and talk about marketing with video. There's a few things that happen when you make videos and you get yourself on camera and you show your repairs off, show the before and after, show what's possible, and engage your clients and your potential clients from a video standpoint where you're there. When you do that, people get to know you and they get to know your face. So they're going to start to trust you, even though they've never met you, never talked to you, anything like that. You can actually get to the point where you roll up to a job and you go to get out of your vehicle and the customer is going to be like, oh my goodness, it's you. I can't believe you're actually the one that came and is fixing my car. In fact, there was a gentleman on Facebook, Daryl, listened to the webinar, took that advice, put it into use, and his first video that he got his face on camera has already landed in that exact same scenario where he showed up and the customer was like, wow, Daryl, I can't believe you're the guy. I watched your video and you're actually here to fix my car. So you get that power. So a little bit of celebrity status. Selling goes back to people buy from who they know, like, and trust. So if they don't watch your videos or you don't have videos or anything like that, you have to let them get to know you. You have to build rapport and get them to like you, and then get them to feel that they can trust you, all before you can make that sales process. When you do video and you've got, a library where they'll literally get on your YouTube channel and watch all your videos, they already feel like they know you because you're the face of your business. They like you if you're yourself and you're engaging. They'll get to like you. And then our repairs are all visuals. So if we're showing the visuals of what is actually done and possible with PDR, they'll feel as though they trust you. So the know, like, and trust is already taken care of before they even ever reach out to you. So that's part of the power. And a couple other add-on super powerful things with video, and namely on YouTube, is Google loves YouTube, and you can use YouTube videos to rank yourself on Google and on YouTube and build up search results. It's like you do the video one time and you're set up and you're out there and you're ready to go. Another added bonus is you can also use that, like on my channel, I have a Toyota Highlander tailgate dent repair, something like that is the title of the video. I actually got a client over near Paul Corden, and she found me on the YouTube video because of the SEO power of the video, and I was actually able to refer her to Paul. But they call that the long tail. It was that long search term that there aren't going to be a ton of searches a year, but when you show up and you're the video for that long search term, it works like a dream. So there's three of the biggest things for me about marketing with video. So I hope that helps clear it up, and that's why video is so important. Inside of the course, we teach you how to do all of that, how to make these videos, keep it super simple. So head on over, check that out. thepdrvideocourse.com will get you there. You get to see my smiling face on a video talking to you about the course. So go check it out. Thanks for listening. This is episode 32 of the PDR Marketing Minute. I'm Gene Fetty, and we'll talk to you next week.